This is President James Monroe. Right after he was elected president, he went on a U.S. tour giving speeches, meeting veterans, and greeting families. Why do you think the President of the United States would go on a nationwide tour? President Monroe hoped his travels would help put an end to political divisiveness in the U.S., and for a while, he succeeded. In this lesson, we'll learn about that time of relative unity and optimism in the United States, usually known as the era of good feelings. Let's dive in. James Monroe was elected president in 1816, following the War of 1812, in which Americans fought for territory against Britain. The war ended with the Treaty of Ghent, through which the United States and Britain remained in control of the same lands in North America they had held before the war. In the U.S., the defense of territory and the perceived American victory contributed to a surge in pride and patriotism across the young, scrappy nation that had managed to defeat, once again, the British military. During the early 1800s, there were two political parties in the United States: the Federalist Party, which advocated for a strong central government, and the Democratic Republicans, who defended the rights of individual states. After the War of 1812, the Federalists declined in popularity, leaving the Democratic Republican Party as the dominant political force. But these political differences still divided much of the nation when Democratic Republican James Monroe took office in 1817. Monroe sought to unify the country and hoped that he could do so by eliminating political parties altogether. To achieve his aim, Monroe embarked on a tour around the country, targeting states that were strongholds of Federalist Party members. His goodwill tour included several cities, among them Boston, Massachusetts. As a popular state among Federalists, Monroe wasn't expecting Boston to produce a friendly crowd, but to his surprise, he was welcomed by everyone: children, war veterans, and Federalist Party members. Afterwards, a Boston newspaper ran an article on Monroe's visit with the headline, "Era of Good Feelings," stating that many persons have met at festive boards, in pleasant converse, whom party politics had long severed. What do these words suggest about Monroe's visit? The article's words and its headline suggested that there was a sense of optimism, a feeling of potential for a united nation without diverse party politics. Monroe's quest for unity also led him to work closely with some Federalists, including John Quincy Adams, who became Monroe's Secretary of State. Adams, who'd spent many years working abroad as a U.S. ambassador, was particularly concerned about the import of cheap European goods, which American manufacturers struggled to compete with. You see, the War of 1812 had been tremendously costly, and help was needed to stabilize the U.S. economy. So Adams urged Congress to pass the Tariff of 1816, which imposed taxes on goods imported from foreign countries. What might the purpose of the Tariff of 1816 have been? The Tariff of 1816 intended to protect American industries from foreign competition, making foreign goods more expensive for American consumers, and encouraging those consumers to instead buy goods produced in the United States. The Monroe administration also spearheaded another economic driver: the creation of a national bank. In 1816, Congress approved the creation of the Second Bank of the United States. A first bank had been created after the Revolutionary War, but its charter had come to an end. The Second Bank of the United States established a uniform national currency and encouraged federal government investment in the construction of roads, canals, and bridges. Why do you think the U.S. government supported these construction projects? These construction projects not only created jobs for American workers and invested in American-made materials, but they facilitated transportation, as well as trade and communication between different regions of the country. This made it easier for white American settlers to move west of the Mississippi River, into lands that indigenous peoples had inhabited for thousands of years. This movement would only increase in the years that followed, as the United States gained even more territory. In 1803, the U.S. government purchased the Louisiana Territory from France, And in 1819, Spain ceded Florida to the United States. As the country expanded, Monroe's government sold portions of those lands to white Americans and implemented other policies that he hoped would further boost the economy. Economic prosperity, coupled with a growing sense of national unity and pride, helped Monroe win re-election in 1820, with a landslide victory, winning all but one electoral vote. But this time of unity, prosperity, and good feelings came with a cost. During this era, the U.S. government signed numerous treaties with indigenous tribes, often promising them protection of their lands and rights. But these treaties were frequently broken or forcibly renegotiated, leading to further loss of land and resources for indigenous communities. President Monroe approved of these policies, claiming that if the Indian tribes do not abandon that state and become civilized, they will decline and become extinct. What do you think Monroe meant by those words? Monroe believed that indigenous people should assimilate or abandon their own customs and cultures in favor of white American culture. To promote this assimilation, many indigenous youth were required to attend schools where they were taught English, Christianity, and other customs. As the U.S. expanded to the west and southeast, its harmful practices expanded right along with it, including slavery. Some state governments enacted laws that restricted enslaved individuals' rights, while other state governments began to oppose them. And, as this expansion continued, there remained a question among the country's leaders. Should new states be admitted as slave states or free states? The balance between slave and free states was crucial in maintaining political harmony, as both sides sought to protect their interests and influence in Congress. To resolve the issue, Congress proposed the Missouri Compromise, which would maintain an equal number of free and slave states in the Union. But the compromise only temporarily eased tensions over the issue of slavery. James Monroe's goodwill tour may have kicked off a decade of relative harmony, but millions of people in the United States did not enjoy the good feelings of the time. Eventually, Monroe was unable to prevent the nation from falling back into division, causing political tensions to grow in the years that followed. Now it's time to show what you know. Why was the period between 1815 and 1825 called an era of good feelings? Do you think that name is justified? The period between 1815 and 1825 is called the Era of Good Feelings because it was a time of optimism and unity in the United States. American industry strengthened, a new national bank was established, large projects were built, and many Americans moved onto lands newly acquired by the U.S. government. But as the country expanded its territory and economy, millions of people in the U.S. experienced challenges, including indigenous communities and enslaved individuals. Slowly, disagreements escalated between American political leaders, leading to even more conflict. Thanks for learning with us today and for taking another step toward putting together the pieces of the past.